Good evening. How's everybody doing? This is a packed house. I love to see it. So for those who don't know, I am Drew Alves. I am the assistant provost for diversity, equity, and inclusion here at SVA. When we think about programming, we're always trying to elevate what we're doing. We're always trying to bring in new, different voices and folks to campus so that people can have that experience and get the opportunity to meet really amazing speakers. This year, when we were starting to think about Black History Month, we weren't quite sure what we were going to do. And luckily, we had a colleague right in the office suite, and Jeremy, who reached out and was like, I have an idea. And this idea just continued to bud until Jeremy mentioned our amazing guest. And I was like, whoa, you can bring this person to campus? And Jeremy was like, let me work on some things and I'll see what I can do. And Jeremy was able to come back and say, yes, for sure, we can bring former Congressman Jamaal Bowman to campus. So without further ado, I'll kick it over to Jeremy and Congressman Bowman.
I'll be super brief. Can you hear us okay without mic? So we're going to do this. The Congressman asked me to do this as a conversation, but by that we mostly mean I'm going to get out of his way so he can talk. But I'll say just briefly, Jamaal Bowman grew up in East Harlem in the East River houses. He had a long career as an educator and an activist around education, focusing on, among other things, gun violence in schools, on the resistance against standardized testing and how they were undermining education. He was a principal in the Bronx, a school principal, and then had a whole departure in his life, which I've never really gotten to talk to you about the leap there, but where he ran for Congress against, I believe, a
31-year incumbent, 16 term.
31-year incumbent, Eliot Engel, who was, among other things, kind of one of the most hawkish members of the Democratic Party, one of the most interested in prosecuting wars abroad. And he won a huge upset victory in 2020 and was in Congress for 4 years, standing up for many issues that I think he'll tell us about tonight, but among others, Green New Deal legislation, especially focused on retrofitting schools for climate resiliency, the Green New Deal for public schools, labor legislation, the PRO Act, which would make it much easier to organize unions in the US, racial justice issues, and so many other things under the sun that the Congressman stood for. In 2024, he was running for re-election, as one has to do every 2 years, but largely because of his very brave stance against the genocide in Gaza very early on, when that's right. Congressman Bowman was targeted by a wave of outside spending, the highest spending in any American primary in American history. $20 million were spent against the congressman. He still ran quite an extraordinary race, but as is too often the case, dark money, outside money in our politics undermines democracy, and we didn't quite make it over the finish line in that race. But he continues to be active in social movements, in justice initiatives for tenants, racial justice, labor work, educators, activism, and on the Zohran Mamdani campaign most recently. So let's just give him a huge warm welcome. Okay, so maybe you should start. I just told your story, I feel.
Yeah, I was like, leave me something to talk about. Right?
But maybe tell them a little bit about how you came to be where you are, your path.
Yeah, sure. Good evening. Thank you all for being here. So, born and raised in New York City. He mentioned my time in East Harlem projects, 105th and 1st Avenue. I actually lived there until I was 8 and then moved to the Upper East Side after that. And it was really the tale of two worlds. Anyone here who's grown up in the projects or been in the projects or has family in the projects, you know about the physical design of the projects, and it's kind of like stuck in the ghetto with no exits kind of thing. And then death in my family led to me moving to the Upper East Side to live with my mom, and that opened up like a whole new world to me of like working class people, Park Avenue, Museum Mile. My favorite thing to do as a kid was walk from my apartment to 92nd and 2nd across Central Park to the Museum of Natural History and just go to the planetarium. And fast forward to my time when I became a teacher, which was 1999, in the South Bronx. Bronx in the house? Bronx now? Okay, Bronx always in the house. So became a teacher in 1999 in the South Bronx, and just was reminded of the two Americas that we live in, one with incredible wealth and resources and opportunity and imagination and curiosity on the Upper East Side, and the other in East River, South Bronx, or name your American hood. And it's just a lack of opportunity and despair and so many other challenges. And, you know, as I worked in education over the course of my career, you realize that these things aren't by accident. This is not happenstance. This is political design, right? A political design that allows certain communities the space and opportunity to thrive, while other communities, are redlined into the most horrid conditions. And so that was my upbringing, got into education, and just like, as I started teaching, which was an accident. I didn't, have a plan to become a teacher. My life wasn't really much of a plan. It was just kind of me following my intuition for 50 years. I'm going to be 50 this year. I don't, recommend that to other people, but I do. but I do. I believe in intuitive intelligence, and I believe we should follow our intuition. And for me, my mom was a single mom, worked in the post office, was working all the time. I got 3 sisters. We were kind of by ourselves, and I'm Gen X, so all the memes you see about Gen X kind of just raising themselves. That's kind of like it's kind of like how I was. But the more time I spent in education, the more I just became pissed off about the way we were teaching kids from marginalized communities, and the overemphasis on standardized curriculum and standardized testing without any space for them to learn about themselves, their history, and their culture, and what made them brilliant. I just became frustrated by that. And so, started as an elementary school teacher, became a high school dean of students. And, when I went from elementary to high school, I thought that the kids, because I was in like the South Bronx, like not just the South, but it was like the South Bronx, right? And so 1,500 kids in a K-4 school in the South Bronx. Kids was off the chain, but it was amazing. I loved it, right? When I got to high school at MLK High School, I thought that those kids would outgrow, if you will, some of the rough around the edges challenges that they had in elementary school. And they didn't really outgrow the challenges. What they did was kind of tribal up against this system and form what we call gangs, but for them, it's a place of belonging. But the system, especially during the Michael Bloomberg era, was all about criminalizing these kids. And, I don't know if you know what MLK High School is, but I think it's on 67th in Amsterdam. I forget exactly where. But MLK High School is right across the street from LaGuardia High School. So imagine me going to work every day with black and brown kids walking through metal detectors to get into MLK, and the LaGuardia kids like, walking through, no metal detectors. They got their iPods, they're chilling. So literally the high school experience in front of me was one of liberation and one of oppression, like right there across the street from each other. So this just continued to piss me off and actually freaking depress me. And so that's when I wrote a proposal. That's when I started journaling. right? Journaling's not just for girls. Like my generation thought journaling was for girls. You all are much more advanced than us, so maybe everyone journals. But I started journaling, like to kind of work through my sadness of the conditions in which I was working in. I would buy composition notebooks and I would just write my wildest dreams. And one of the wild dreams was, if I had a school, if I could be principal of a school, what would that school be like? And so I just would write every day, and I would write everything I learned in grad school, everything I learned in undergrad, all my ideas I would put into this book, into my composition notebooks. Fast forward a year later, I had a chance to train as a principal, and about 8 months after that, I had a chance to open my own school. And I couldn't fucking believe it. Like, I couldn't believe that someone like me, now understand, I went to public schools my whole life. I was not a great student, not because I wasn't smart, it's because I was bored as hell. And my priority was having fun with my friends. It wasn't learning all I could in school. Now, if the curriculum reflected me, I probably would have had a different experience, but it didn't. So to come from that, to come from being beaten up by the police at 12 years old, to come from a sister addicted to crack cocaine and me being almost shot multiple times before I had to move out the city to graduate high school, to opening my own school in the Bronx was crazy. But it was awesome. And so our curriculum in our school was rooted in the history and culture of our kids. I wanted this school of all Black and Latino students to know about their history, know about their culture, know about how powerful and amazing and awesome they were. And that was through technology, that was through humanities, that was through STEM, that was through the arts, particularly the arts. And this gave me an opportunity, as someone who was raised on hip hop culture, to bring hip hop into the school as like a form of just communication and expression. And in 2016, our school became the #1 performing middle school in New York City. And that was incredible. And we did it breaking all the rules. Like, we did not follow any standard that the city gave us or the state or whatever. The pathway was through the brilliance of our kids, and through their brilliance, they showed the city that they could outperform everyone. So it was incredible. A year later, 2016 was Trump 1.0, right? So early 2017, he was sworn in. And 2017 became, the 2017-2018 school year became one of the most deadly school years in New York City and New York State. Literally deadly. 34 kids in the Bronx alone, I believe, we gotta look this up, but in the Bronx alone, died within the K-12 school system in the Bronx. 17 died by suicide. One story I heard, because remember, this immigration thing is not new. Trump was doing it the first time around. One mom ran away from home to escape, being detained by ICE or immigration officers. The child thought the mom was taken by ICE and took her own life. That theme continued throughout the 2017-2018 school year. Up the street, New Rochelle High School. My school in the Bronx was by Co-op City. That's all the way northeast Bronx. Last stop on the 5 train, right outside of Westchester County. 2 girls get into a fight, New Rochelle High School. One girl stabs the other, kills her. LGBTQ kid is bullied at another Bronx school. He's tired of being bullied. He brings a knife. Next person says something to me, I'm going crazy. Kills one kid in the classroom, puts another in critical condition. Girl right across the street of Co-op City, foster girl. She was bullied in school. felt she had no recourse, goes to the top of a building and jumps off right after school. This is all in one like condensed time period. And then like the probably biggest one that became national news was a young man named Junior, who was in a case of mistaken identity. This young man named Junior comes out of a bodega and is beaten to death by a Dominican gang in the Bronx. That one I wrote an op-ed about, I believe, in the Daily News, because I just personally couldn't take it no more. And then what I saw in my school was, so we're talking a lot about mental health now, and it was declared a mental health emergency a couple of years ago by the Surgeon General. But in my school, I saw the signs. I saw an increase in self-harm, my students. And there was even one case where one young girl cut a little too deep and had to be rushed to the hospital from my school. So I started to feel powerless as a principal. And I always was excited about education because I felt like education is the revolution. And I still feel that way. But I was feeling powerless during this year. At the same time, I'm working on my doctorate. And I just felt like I wanted to I felt I could do more. I felt I could have an bigger impact. And so I realized that the elected officials that I was talking to and working with, they had no sense of urgency around these things, and they had no vision. It's like people were okay with poor children and black children and brown children fucking dying, and there was no like call to arms to stop it. And I just couldn't abide by that. And so, I had the audacity to run for Congress, but it wasn't really audacity. I mean, 2018, we saw the squad break through and win a historic election, and particularly AOC, which was in the Bronx, just like me. And then when I would watch them in Congress, the way they talked, the way they moved, the way they thought, gave me like a footprint to step into in the political space. And I just thought I still think they're just incredibly revolutionary. I mean, we're talking about 4 women of color, 2 Muslim, 1 Palestinian, 1 with a hijab, 1 dark skin, and 1 Puerto Rican from the Bronx, challenging the infrastructure of white supremacy. I mean, that to me was just awesome. And so in 2019, when I decided to run, it was a movement time, not just because of them, but we had a decade of Occupy Wall Street, which was happening like at the beginning of the Obama administration. And then like multiple iterations of Black Lives Matter, Trayvon Martin initially, Eric Gardner, Mike Brown, and there's so many others. And then the squad, Bernie in 2016, and the squad in 2018. So it was like movement time. So me running in a district that was majority Black, majority minority, in the Bronx where I had a base, to the establishment it was a crazy idea, but to me it made perfect sense, especially when you looked at, and I'll end with this, the previous election, only 24,000 people voted in a district with almost 500,000 registered Democrats. So I said to myself, I personally could knock on 25,000 doors and I'm going to beat this guy. But thank God, the Justice Democrats and DSA and Working Families Party and all of them came to support me, and we were able to win a historic election. And so, sorry for the long answer, but that's a little bit about just my journey from childhood to Congress. And then obviously there's a lot to talk about after I entered Congress.
Yeah, maybe we can get to that. And no apologies for long answers because they're pretty great answers. Maybe while you're on, what occurred to me to talk about what you were speaking of is, and we've talked a lot about, is the role of hip hop in sort of culture and education, what that's meant for you. And I think as young artists, thinking about the relationship of art and politics and kind of what art has to say in dark times, I'm curious if you can expand some on your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, we need art all the time, but we need art especially in dark times. And I'm not, I might have a little bit of artist in me, but I'm not like an artist.
I mean, I've heard you drop beats.
I dropped a few, you know what I'm saying? I got a little something. But no, I mean, art gives us a space or an opportunity and a voice even. I mean, how else do you respond to the world and the complex emotions that this world emotes? How do you, what other way to respond to that than through the expression of your emotions through art? I mean, for me, I don't even have the words to, I struggle to find the words to respond to the video of Alex Preddy being killed, or Renee Good, or George Floyd, or Rodney King, or like a Trump press conference, or like genocide in Gaza, or, I mean, how do you find the words? And what for me throughout my life, hip hop and the rappers, but not just the rappers, the dancers, the graffiti artists, they always found the words for me. Like they helped me to make sense of a crazy world, and not just make sense of it, but like to understand it, make sense of it, find myself within it, and then do something about it, right? And so, to me, the arts can create a space and footprints and a platform for others to make sense and understand and find their place within this crazy world, and then do something about it to ultimately change it. And so I was, whether it's documentaries or movies or, I mentioned the Museum of Natural History. I used to, when I was a kid, man, I would not just go to the Museum of Natural History. I would go to the Museum of Modern Art. I would go to every museum on Fifth Avenue. And I was literally like 8, 9 years old. And again, I'm Gen X, so we just went outside. Mom's working, we going outside. So we was just outside, and I would go to the museums, and I would just be blown away by the art. I have no idea who these artists were. I had no idea what I was looking at. I didn't want to study art, in school. No offense, it's fine. But my point is, it was like what I felt in those spaces was something that was incredibly spiritual. And it was the same thing I felt when I would listen to Public Enemy or KRS-One or Rakim or any hip hop artists. It was just like a transformation, and like a I felt like I was operating in a different frequency and rhythm. And so, and you all should go back and listen to this stuff, man. I mean, to have, Public Enemy, and their second album, first of all, every album is incredible, but their second album is called It Take a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. And the cover of the album is Chuck D and Flavor Flav behind jail bars. And the symbol of Public Enemy is like a guy in a scope, but also has a scope on someone else. And the songs were like, Prophets of Rage and Fight the Power and Don't Believe the Hype and Rebel Without a Pause. And you fucking listen to the sound and the lyrics. And I'm 13. So I'm just like, this is like crazy what I'm hearing. It's just like, there's no way, like who I am today came from that. And it came from not just Public Enemy, but KRS-One. Like KRS-One, I mean, anyway, it's just, to me, and the last thing I'll say about this is, the First Amendment of the Constitution gives us the freedom of speech, the freedom to assemble, the freedom to practice the religion we want. I mean, the art is the ultimate representation of the power of one's voice. And so whether you're a powerful orator at a microphone giving a speech, or you draw and paint something that's extraordinary, or you use technology to do something, your voice matters because your voice is the vibration that creates a new world. And through your art, being human, you have a responsibility to do that, especially as we live through inhumane times. And so, no, I can't draw, color, or paint, or do it, or whatever, but I could speak. I could write a little bit. And at this moment especially, we all need to exercise the power of our voices to express the complex emotions that we're dealing with, whether personal, as it relates to, a parent that might be addicted, or divorce, or poverty, or sadness, or judge, or all the regular human things, or the other stuff we're dealing with, which is fascism, in my opinion, and the complexities of this social media AI world that we're living in. And the last thing I'll say is, I don't know if there's anything more human than art. And I think art is in everything and everywhere. And I think as these techno-feudal, capitalists, Broligarch, what's the word? The word I'm looking for is as we live through technological surveillance and AI accelerating that, as well as accelerating genocide, we need to do everything in our power to be as human as possible, which means coming together again in community spaces like this, which means hanging out at the park, which means writing and painting and creating and being fucking human. Because if we concede everything to the AI, that's when the AI wins. And trust me, I use this stuff. I mess around with it. I'm like, let me see how this stuff works. But what I notice is it can't do what I can do. But if we, particularly younger generations, concede to it, then we're finished. So our resistance in this moment is not conceding to it. And to be as fully human as possible, no matter how scary it is, or how judgmental it is, or how uncomfortable it is, we have to be fully human in this moment.
Yeah, I mean, one way of thinking about AI, sort of along the lines you were saying, is like the expropriation of voice, like voice being taken away potentially from a generation and used as raw material for making billions of dollars.
Well, and further surveillance and further dehumanization. And ultimately taking our liberty as humans, making us less human. And so, again, we're living at a time unlike any other time in our lives. And I think the power of art as the ultimate human endeavor is an important response to all of that.
So let's talk about Congress. Agree. Yeah. So what was it like? Did you like it?
Oh man, what was it like? Did I like it? I liked it. It wasn't great, but it was necessary. I liked having a platform. I like being in a space where, my ideas could be shared widely. I like being in a space where I can support policy, write policy that created a conversation, around across the country and around the world. As I have people from other countries always reaching out to me to engage, which is awesome. But it was tough, right? Because Congress is an institution that has been there, 250 years formally, 400 and 6 years, I think, 16, 19, but however long, informally, right? And so that institution in many ways is there to sustain itself as the institution. And as it sustains itself, it sustains certain power structures, right? And those power structures are, people with a lot of resources and a lot of wealth, people from certain communities and backgrounds, and a constitution that, in my opinion, is fundamentally flawed in ways that we have never reconciled, right? Great in a lot of ways, but, oh, by the way, African Americans can only be counted as 3/5 of man because we're not ready to end slavery yet. What? Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, freedom, 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 but not for y'all. And we can't have women in this space either trying to make any decisions. And so from the genesis of the country, it was property owning white men who had the most power. And fast forward 250 years formally, 406 years informally, property owning white men still have all of the power. And that power is so savage and insidious that many of them sex traffic young children. And so there were times where I would go to work every day and feel heart palpitations because of the stress of just being physically in that space. I felt it daily. But I also felt a great responsibility and opportunity to do something. And so, and it's hard to talk about going to Congress without talking about, the impact of lobbies on how Congress functions, and the impact of one of those lobbies in particular, the AIPAC lobby. Because, from even when I was a candidate, I was, told directly and indirectly, don't speak about Palestine that much, and don't say occupation, just say two-state solution, you'll be all right, right? Don't comment on this, don't comment on that. And, the more I learned about it, the more I'm like, what the fuck are we talking about? Like, how? So there's a lot of lying to ourselves and lying to the American people as it relates not just to Palestine, but to a variety of issues. And so, it was. I feel like I have unfinished business there. So, I might want to go back at some point. Thank you for clapping. But I mean, what you see from the outside looking at Congress, like the what looks like incompetence and dysfunction and lack of humanity and morality and no care for Palestinians or poor people, what you see on the outside, that's actual fact on the inside. And so someone like me who spent a career in 20 years in education, literally serving kids directly every day, to go to a place where the kids and the poor and the vulnerable are secondary, it was a tough place to navigate on a consistent basis. And so, but the Green New Deal for public schools, African American History Act, the
I don't know about that one, can you say?
Yeah, so the African American History Act is a bill we introduced just to provide $10 million over 5 years to the Smithsonian Museum to create curriculum for schools to use. Also, understand coming in, this was the height of DEI. This is like we realized that the curriculum that has been implemented wasn't really tapping into our beautiful culture and diversity in this country, and we needed, curriculum that really celebrated that. And so this bill was a part of that. So Green New Deal for public schools, African American History Act, the PRO Act, which I was a co-sponsor, the resolution, what's the name of this white supremacist theory? Great replacement theory. So there were many.
And you had a bill on hip hop.
Yeah, the hip hop, the Rap Act, which stops prosecutors from maliciously using hip hop lyrics when they're not needed to prosecute rappers for crimes, because there are about 500 rappers, at least 500 across the country, that are in jail because of their lyrics, even though the lyric had nothing to do with the crime they're accused of. But the Great Replacement Theory, I want to highlight this one because this was like I was a freshman, and we wrote this resolution and introduced this resolution after the mass shooting in Buffalo in 2022, I think it was. Where this white supremacist, buys a gun. I think he bought it in New York, but then went to Pennsylvania to get it. No, he bought it in Pennsylvania, brought it back, got it adjusted, and then did research on like the poorest black neighborhoods in New York State, found one in Buffalo, drove like 4 hours to Buffalo to get out the car and just shoot random poor black people. This was obviously devastating, and it was the first time like I actually wept at a mass shooting because it was in New York, and this person and in New York that doesn't really happen, and he targeted black people, and I just remember the next day dropping my daughter off to school and like weeping because I'm like, she's a black girl, right? So this person could come into this school and target her because she's a black girl. And she has many Jewish classmates, and those are the two groups who are often targeted by this shit. And so the Great Replacement Theory was a resolution, condemning the Great Replacement Theory was a resolution we wrote and introduced. And it wasn't because of that single mass shooting. If you looked at, there was a mass shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. There was a mass shooting at the Christ Church in, I want to say New Zealand. There was the AME church shooting, and then there was this Buffalo shooting, and they all made references back to this Great Replacement Theory. So as a freshman, to write this resolution, convince leadership that we needed to pass this resolution now, get Nancy Pelosi and all the leaders on board, and then to pass that resolution as a freshman, I was very proud of that. And I was proud because no one else did it, and we actually got it done. So that's one that sticks out. But Congress is complicated.
I mean, and you saw it was coming. I mean, I remember I was at a fundraiser for Summer Lee, your colleague, squad member, Congresswoman in Pittsburgh area, and I'm trying to remember exactly when it was, but she was like at that night she was giving a speech, whatever, and then she was just like, and it hasn't even been a year yet, and the whole room just kind of You were there too that night. That's right. Okay, I'm telling you things you already know, but I mean, now it's been a year, a little more than a year, but I mean, honestly, some of the people running the government are people who believe in the theory you are saying, are like outright racists, obviously classists in bed with billionaires, want to invade countries all over the world. So, I mean, how do you think about what's happening to us? How did we get here?
I mean, this is America. So, we always been here. Maybe simmering under the surface. I mean, sex trafficking of children didn't just begin. That shit's been going on. We just know about it now, right? I mean, just going back to my first term, I'm sworn in January 3rd, 2021. 3 days later, we got white nationalists climbing the walls of the Capitol like some iRobot movie. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was fucking crazy. It's my third day on the job. Like, what the fuck did I get myself into? Right? And it was like, so that's my third day on the job, right? And then, there's so much to say, but like, I come in with a new administration, thank God, we finally cleared them out and, certified the election. But well over 100 members of Congress voted not to certify the election. Think about that. They voted to support fascism then and there, and Trump's big lie that the election was stolen. And this guy, after he lost, kept saying it was stolen, and then said it again for another 4 years, leading to his next election. Think about that. And because the Democratic Party is so impotent and on its heels, we just got our ass kicked in 2024. Project 2025, we knew about that. Trump saying he wanted to be a dictator, we knew about that. We knew about the Epstein files, we knew all that shit. Democratic Party wasn't right on Gaza, in my opinion, wasn't right on just like connecting to the American people in any kind of real authentic way. Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema stopped the passage of Build Back Better, which would have been the tangible economic thing that we could run on and win in 2024, but they stopped it. And so and I say we as a party, but I'm Jamaal Bowman, Black man in America. That's how I identify. I just happen to be a member of the Democratic Party. But we as a party, we paved the way for this. But again, like, the parties are two sides of the same coin in general. Because like corporate money, Citizens United, special interests, blank check to Israel, all of it, the Democrats supported as much as the Republicans. Maybe even more so. Because Republicans, once again, are now taking the American first mantle and pushing back on some of this stuff. So before I even get to talking about this Trump, after October 7th, all of us condemned the attacks of October 7th, as we should have. A month or two later, as the genocide was right in front of our face, my colleagues in Congress could not even acknowledge the slaughter that was happening in Gaza. We stood, I remember my chief of staff said, Jamaal, they have a vigil for all the lives lost in the conflict. You should go to the vigil. I said, okay, I'm thinking, she said all the lives lost, right? So we're going to acknowledge October 7th and everyone else who's being killed. So I go to the vigil. You've probably seen pictures online of like members of Congress standing together on the steps, giving speeches. So we're all there together at this vigil at night. And Speaker Johnson first starts his speech. And in his speech, he is absolutely lying about what happened October 7th. What happened is horrible enough. Acknowledge what really happened, condemn it, horrible enough. But don't now lie about beheaded baby. They were still lying about that. I'm standing there like, how the fuck am I standing here as a member of Congress and the Speaker of the House is lying? Again, think about in school when you read your social studies books about these elected officials in this democracy, and they're like put on this pedestal as these great people. And he's lying. But then Hakeem Jeffries comes and he's not lying, but neither one of them said a word about Gaza. A word. And so, when that's your politics, and again, a constitution as flawed, you create the conditions in the pathway that leads to Trump 2.0. And now technology is out the window with it, and so we have ICE using technology to target immigrants, ICE using technology to target people they don't like, whether they're immigrants or not. The Mahmoud Khalil case, the other brother who was sent to the El Salvador prison, I'm forgetting his name. Yes. And we're living through tyranny, I feel. And so, yeah, like, okay, we're going to win the midterms. But then what? Right? Like, that's why, like, I'm personally doing everything in my power to support progressives across the country to win their races, because we need progressives, and real progressives, not no Dan Goldman progressive. This is my freedom of speech. This is what I say is by no means authorized by the School of Visual Arts. This is just me talking here. But we need the right progressives in there, obviously, and real progressives. But then what are we going to do? We need democracy reform. That's a nice way to say it. The real way to say it is burn it the fuck down and rebuild it. And we got to rebuild it with black, white, brown, yellow, men, women, gay, straight, everybody in the room. Let's look at this fucking Constitution. Let's rewrite this shit. Let's look at this Bill of Rights. Let's do the same. Let's expand the Supreme Court. Let's put term limits. Let's do ethical policies on the Supreme Court. We need fresh look at all of it. Because there's no way we live in the so-called richest country in the history of the world, and I say so-called for many reasons. It's a whole nother talk. But there's no way we live here and we can't do more for the American people, just on a dignity, basic level. You rich people, you still want to be rich, go be rich. So if you're worth $300 billion, what are we talking about? What are we talking about, right? So anyway, I didn't even say anything. I didn't even use Trump's name in that fucking answer. But this is where we are, right? And it's scary. It's actually really scary. But I think, again, one of the ways to break through is through our voices, our communities, and our humanity. Because they can't defeat us all when we're together. And so we're a year and a half in. God willing, progressives win and get into the House, and Democrats take back the House, and then, we figure it out. But like, we cannot continue in a country like this. We cannot continue in a world like this. There's no reason. Any world where babies are being killed with bombs and children are being trafficked and raped and killed, any world where that is, that's savagery. That's devil. That's the devil. And so any world where that exists, we cannot abide by that. We should all be in the streets every day tearing this shit down. Can't abide by it.
I guess the last, we can open it up, I think, to general conversation, but the last, maybe on that, on the hopeful note of that, you were very involved in the Zoran Mamdani campaign, and we have a new mayor. And one of my favorite videos of the whole campaign was you and Zoran at Wu-Tang. Everyone should watch it if they haven't seen it. And it was very moving, actually, about your love of hip hop, and you're bringing them out there, and what they've meant to so many New Yorkers. But yeah, if you want to say a little bit about where we are in New York City, and also the role that, I do think so many people were inspired by that campaign. So many people of so many walks of life got involved, including young artists of so many kinds. And does that provide a sort of roadmap for what else we might be doing in Democratic Party and the society?
Yeah, so I want to start by saying no single politician is going to be our savior in this moment. So I want to start by saying that, okay? So Zoran is an incredible politician, person, human, brilliant, organizer, one of the best we've ever seen. He is not our savior, and no individual politician will be our savior. The process to him getting into office involved communities organizing within their communities and across the city to get out the vote to support this incredible politician to help him win that election. More so than him, the infrastructure involved in building community is the power. Because that organizing power can get other people elected, voted into office, and other people voted out of office. It can also put pressure on punk-ass politicians who ain't doing the right thing to get them to do the right thing. And so organizing needs to be part of our voice and muscle in the same way as going to the bathroom is part of our existence as human beings. We have to do it on a regular basis. But there's no one savior. There are leaders, and oftentimes the politicians aren't the leaders. Look at history, right? Like Fred Hampton wasn't an elected official.
Jesse Jackson.
Jesse Jackson, rest in peace, was not he ran, but he led outside of that infrastructure, right? And so we need leading people and leading voices in every living room in the city to move this city and state and country in the right direction. But yeah, I mean, so first things first, the Wu-Tang video was the best political video in the history of politics in America.
I think so too.
Check it out if you haven't seen it. But, you know, it was the magic of the moment, right? Like I worked with Zoran a little bit when I was in Congress and he was in the Assembly. When I heard he was going to run for mayor and I saw his first video, I'm like, oh, yeah, this is good. And then when I met with him, I'm like, yeah, this guy, yeah, he got it, right? And so when I endorsed him, mid-May, I got involved in the campaign and just did my part to help push him over the top. And once he won, it was like,
He's being too humble. He was out at, dawn at Subways handing out
yeah,
leaflets to people.
But that's how you win elections, right? And my title as Congressman, a former Congressman, didn't stop me from. I enjoy doing that because I like people. That's my personality. But when he won, the whole world was paying attention, and I happened to get a call from one of the managers of Wu-Tang, invited me to a concert. I'm like, can I bring my boy? They're like, who? I'm like, Zoran. They're like, sure. and so he pulls up, and everything you see in the video is just organic and powerful and awesome. And you hear my voice on a voicemail sort of telling the story of hip-hop's power to change the world. And just a note on that, I mean, hip-hop is also representative of the communities that I was talking about before, the projects and marginalized communities. And so poverty and trauma and violence is ubiquitous in these communities, right? And I often think about like Tupac Shakur, if he was still here, I mean, he was gone at 25, right? And so many others, right? But Tupac resonates for another reason. So, and many artists, unfortunately, are often gone too soon before they could grow up. I mean, I'm going to turn 50 this year, and I feel like I'm just maturing right now in my life. This is a bit of a tangent, but I'm going to say it anyway. So we have Zoran in office, but we still have kids getting shot and killed in New York City streets every day. Every day. And like, can we do something about that? Like, the answer is yes, by the way. It's fucking yes. But why aren't we? Like, why are kids still being shot and killed in New York City streets every day? That's a very important question for us to explore. And again, it goes back to what I said about community. But it also goes back to, so white supremacy is a cognitive disease. The idea that whiteness is the best or the most important thing that we should aspire to, and specifically white patriarchy, but like white supremacy is a cognitive disease. Racism is a cognitive disease. It's a disease of the mind. And we have people, doctors, politicians, teachers, serving vulnerable communities underneath whiteness on the caste ladder that is reinforcing the disease of white supremacy and racism as a cognitive disease every day. And some of them are doing it by accident. They don't even know they're doing it. But if we don't explore the question and ask the question and grapple with the question and engage with the question, how can we ever be free? We're never going to be free if that disease continues to permeate our minds like a disease. And so we're going to continue to have lower expectations for Black boys than we do everybody else. And you'll have teachers who say they don't, but then when you look at the data from New York City schools, Black boys continue to perform at the bottom, continue to be referred for special education more than everyone else, continue to be suspended, continue to be expelled, continue to get detention at rates astronomically higher than everybody else in 2026. So if I'm a Black boy in this system, and every step of the way I'm reminded that I am inferior, what else am I to do than to pick up a gun and maybe use it on another Black boy? So electoral politics is one thing, but forget whoever's in office. How are we dealing with a crippling disease that I think is destroying our humanity as the rise of AI continues? To me, this is a moment, and it's always a moment, but especially now, to reclaim our humanity for each other in a way that probably has never been done before. You know, because we got nations and we got, armies, and we got we're tribal, and we're fighting each other for something, right? I mean, shit, man. I want to live in a world where we actually work together to solve big problems. I want to live in that world. I want to build that world. I want to create that world. And so, sorry for the tangent, but Zoran is great. We have bigger things to work on that's rooted in our humanity.
Let's give a first. That I think is a great note for us to open it up a little bit. Also, I forgot for students in the room, here's the sign-up sheet. I totally forgot to send it around. Though if you're not on the list, you're also welcome to sign up to get emails about our events. But yeah, so I think, maybe let's take a few questions, comments, whatever. So just raise your hand, and if you can stand up to speak loud so people can hear you.
Hello, my name's Kylie. I'm in a master's program for illustration, and the question I have for you is just, what does burning it all down look like to you?
The George Floyd, civil rights, suffrage, abolition movement combined as a national prolonged strike until the powers that be yield or are replaced. that's the nonviolent way, and I hope it remains nonviolent. And I say hope it remains nonviolent because they're coming at us with violence. And so I worry about someone at some point saying, fuck that, we're gonna come with violence too, because that could get crazy. But when I think about that George Floyd moment, I just remember the world erupting after he was killed, and it was sustained. And it was like, F the system and F these institutions. But that combined with I wasn't there for the civil rights movement, but what I read about, what I saw, what I learned. And all of this, and what I just described are like big moments, but like it starts in living rooms. So like how often are we in living rooms with each other, even strategizing and plotting on this shit? Which we absolutely have to do to support the continued big moments and then create a cycle effect that's continuous. Part of it is, so yes, electoral politics matters, right? And we still have, even in the mayor's race, we still have most people not voting, for example. And so we need to get those numbers up. And then the other thing is, it's like, people are struggling economically. And I want us to build, I don't know if it's a mutual aid system or something where we could provide support to people economically as we engage in this movement politics. Because many people are afraid to lose their jobs, they're afraid to, challenge the system because they'll be, what's that term? Not only blacklisted, what's the other term? Doxed or, all of that. We need better mutual aid infrastructure. So when I get a lot of respect for my position in 2024 on Gaza. Like, ironically, December, I remember the day I called it a genocide. It was December 1st, 2023. It was freezing cold. There was a hunger strike outside of the White House led by a little-known assemblyman named Zoran Mamdani. And I was there with Rashida Tlaib and Cori Bush, and we were acknowledging the lives lost in Gaza. We were reading the names. And the majority of the names were infants. Zero. We were reading the names and the ages. The majority was 0 age. And that night I called it a genocide. And so I run my race and I lose my race, which means I lost my job. So there was no group that came and said, hey, Jamaal, we got you. You could work this job or do this or do that, and we're going to help you pay your... That didn't exist. And so I'm not saying it's just for me. I'm just saying, like, there's real cost to this stuff. One more quick story, and then, thank you for the question. So we need community, we need infrastructure, we need living rooms to build these mass movements that are sustainable until the opponents submit. But we also need mutual aid to support people who really put it on the line. Dr. King's daughter was interviewed recently by someone, and he asked her, did we do enough as a community to support you when your father was killed? And her answer was, no one's ever asked me that. This was in 2024. No one had asked Dr. King's daughter that question. And so I think that's telling and informative of like the kind of infrastructure and safety net we need to build for each other as we engage in this movement that I'm praying for. Thank you.
Saw another hand around here. Go ahead.
I just had a question. I know that you're a big supporter of the labor movement, and so I just wanted to know what are some motivators or what has really gotten you to support the labor movement as much as you
Well, my mother worked for the post office, and so she was in the Postal Workers Union, and that helped me to like live a solid working class life in a good community and grow up decent. As a teacher, I was in the teachers union, and very explicitly, I remember the 2008 crash, and it like was a recession and all those things, and we had a strong union, and that didn't impact us the same way. Like we just kept it moving. We had our salary, we had our benefits, and all those things, but also just on a human level. Like it's not even, to me, it's common sense. It's not even like a thing to support the labor movement. People work, they should get paid a living wage. End of story. Like that's not radical, complicated to me. And so it's not even it's like how I was raised. It's not like a place I got to, you know what I mean? It's just the way it should be. Especially when you have people who I mean, Elon's on his way to being a trillionaire, right? I mean, what are we talking about? You can't pay people a living wage? And then the last thing I'll say is, again, this is on purpose. This is on purpose. And this is another thing where the people have to rise up and respond to it, which is happening. We just need it like times 1,000.
It's another one of my favorite videos of you is, I think it was for some DSA event where Democratic Socialists of America event, where you're talking about the PRO Act and you're like, we're going to unionize every workplace. We're going to, like, every corner of this country.
That joint went super viral. And
so
when I see like DSA people like everywhere, they bring that up every time. Like they love this video. Send it to me. I need to see it again.
I will.
I was fired up that day. Yeah.
Other comments, questions?
My man right here.
Oh, hi.
What's up?
Hey, so when you like ran for office, I guess, right? Would you say there's like an issue of like accessibility for especially marginalized communities to like run for office, or just even like jumping into politics, I guess, like as a whole? Like,
When you say accessibility, what?
it's like money essentially, like we need money to run. A lot of stuff.
Yeah. So I finally, where you been, yo? This is amazing all night. Where you been? You just getting here? So I finally had a chance to write a book about this, and so it should be coming out this fall. Be on the lookout for it. Oh, thank you. Yeah, you can clap for that. And so, yeah, right. So I'll try to answer very quickly. So I told you about just the circumstances I was dealing with as a principal, and working on my doctorate. As soon as I finished my doctorate, I was like, what am I going to do next? And I considered being a superintendent or working in a superintendent's office, and it just didn't feel like a good fit. So I decided to run for office. And so I had no idea how to run for office, to your point. I just, again, in my mind, it's very simple. I did the math. I can knock on 25,000 doors, and I'll convince more people to vote for me than him, and I'm going to win. As I started calling people, multiple people asked me, have you talked to the Justice Democrats? And I said no, and I didn't know who they were. So for those who don't know, the Justice Democrats, they recruit and train people from all across the country to run for Congress, specifically in deep blue districts. And so I had my friend recommend me to them, and they interviewed me, and they decided to endorse me out the gate. And so that helped me with some infrastructure to get started. First thing I had to do, let me use a prop here, I had to call every single person in my phone to ask them to donate to my campaign. It was the first thing I had to do. Even if I hadn't spoken to people in years, many, many years. But, people were, I called people I hadn't spoken to in years. They were excited about it. They tossed me a couple bucks. 20, 30, 100, sometimes 200. After calling everybody on my phone, I raised 30 grand just from my phone. We printed some flyers. We launched the campaign, and the next week we were knocking doors a year in advance. We hired a finance director who would sit with me as I did call time, calling complete strangers, asking them for money too. Just as Democrats had a list of donors, they gave me that list, and we also there are companies that rent lists to you. So we rented like the Working Families Party list, we rented the Squad list, we rented lists of people who might donate to me as well. And I called these complete strangers all day, every day. Well, after I got off work, because I was still working at the time, which was very hard. But I called complete strangers and just raised as much money as I could. And then I did that for 6 months, and then I resigned from the Department of Education. And I took out loans against my retirement. I didn't really have much savings, I'm working class. And I took out those loans to pay my bills and just fundraise, knock on doors, meet and greets, and that was it. And then people helping. And then we raised $750,000 up until June. And then something happened that is going to go down as one of the biggest political gaffes in American history. My opponent in the middle of the George Floyd protests was at a hot mic, and he was heard saying he wanted to speak, and they told him he couldn't speak. It was too many people. So at the hot mic, he pulled down his mask and said, if I didn't have a primary, I wouldn't care. And the borough president said, what did you say? Made him repeat it, and he repeated it again. If I didn't have a primary, I wouldn't care. So this is not part of your question, but I got to tell you the story. Someone calls me out the blue. They're like, yo, Jamaal, you hear what Elliot Engel just said? I'm like, no, what happened? I'm doing call time. Elliot Engel just said if you didn't have primary, I wouldn't care. I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't even know what you're talking. Go to Facebook Live. It just happened right now. So I'll go to Facebook Live, and I rewind it to when Elliot Engel comes into the shot, and you can hear him say it clear as day. So I copy and paste it to the signal chat of the comms team. That's also when you run for office, you have like 1 million chats. So we have the comms chat. I was like, yo, rewind to like 4 minutes and 36 seconds. You're not going to believe it. So Waleed Shahid, who now works with the mayor, he saw it and he dropped in the chat, oh, this might be the end of his career. we shared it with Emily No, with New York One. She posted it online. We quote tweeted it. The shit got like 1 million views in an hour. By the end of the night, it was the leading story on every news station. And we raised $110,000 that day. Our average raise was about $1,500. And every day after that, we raised an average of $77,000 till the end of the race. So we were good at fundraising. This shit put us in the stratosphere. And so this is all in the book. The book is dope. I can't wait to share it with you. But it's tough, man. And resigning from the Department of Education, taking out a loan against my retirement, this is crazy shit. This is why my mother-in-law and wife didn't want me to run for office. And God bless my wife for going through that. But she thought I was crazy, and she thought I was going to get my ass kicked. I was confident I was going to win. I don't know where that confidence came from. I guess it goes back to what I said earlier. Follow your intuition. Intuition is this God talking to you. Intuition. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Earlier, you had said that you asked yourself, we should do something about this. And that kind of struck me because you're a congressman, ex-congressman. What does it feel like being on the inside and to feel, I don't want to say helpless, but like to have that feeling of we should be doing something about this when you're the person?
Yeah. Well, a congressperson is a legislator. They're not the president. They're not the mayor or the governor, right? So there's less power with each individual legislator because in the House, you need 218 votes to pass something out the House, and then it goes to the Senate, and you need 60 votes to pass, for it to pass the Senate before it gets to the president's desk. So it's much less power. But we do have the power of the bully pulpit and the power of our voices. And sometimes that alone is enough to shift the conversation and move the needle, both as it relates to national politics, but also local politics, like the Green New Deal that we introduced, Green New Deal for public schools. It's been adopted by cities across the country, and it never passed. It never even came to the floor for a vote, right? But that's because of ongoing organizing around the country. And so it was debilitating when I was there because I used to be a principal. As a principal, kids come in, you keep them safe, you make sure they're fed, you give them a great education, you hug them, they go home, and you do it again. So it's like direct service every day versus we just here talking shit. And y'all can say whatever y'all want. And people still getting shot back in my district. What are we doing about that? Right? So that was really tough for me to deal with. But the power of that bully pulpit can't be overstated. It's very, very important. But it was absolutely tough, man, because I came there to get stuff done. And again, on the surface, we did, right? Like we the American Rescue Plan and the Chips and Science Act, and we passed some stuff, right? But the nail in the coffin policy would have been, in a good way, Build Back Better. Because that had universal child care, historic investments in climate, historic investments in housing, paid leave, stuff that America never had before. And we could have had it if it weren't for fucking Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema. And so, yeah, man, it was tough to navigate some of that. Boss, you had your hand up. You still? Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sorry if I'm just.
I have a question regarding the prices of AI and algorithm in the field of education. So we know that AI and algorithm tends to give people content that affirms their ideology in a way that like they're trying to promote consuming of content. And in that sense, I kind of foresee this apocalyptic vision of the future where people are turning themselves into closed-minded political narcissists, or what I refer, the most accurate word I can think of, spiritual masturbators.
Jesus! Damn, son!
These are not my friends, so I don't know.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
Under this regard, as someone who's been pretty active in the field of politics and education, what do you think are potential ways that we could, or things that we can do as a community or as individuals to promote more exposures in diverse perspective on political issues to prevent people from being unexposed to different aspects of certain.
Through the AI technology? How do we do that through AI?
Not in a way through it, but how can we in some way just prevent or maybe slow down the process of creating extreme normalization of content that doesn't necessarily have a rightful justification?
Mm-hmm. Got it. So the short answer is I'm still figuring that out and still exploring that. Last year when I was, out of work because I lost my congressional seat, I was messing around with AI a little bit to learn as much as I could about it and to figure out how it works and ultimately I use it to help me like organize stuff or clean up like documents or like as like a super fast like Google search kind of thing, right? There was one point when I was like trying to mess with it through a creative endeavor. And I almost felt part of my brain being taken away as I was doing it. I was like, yo, shit. I can't use this like that, right? But I had fun as I played around with it doing that, but I realized that like I needed to be in control as I did it. I couldn't submit my creativity or certain aspects of myself to it because one, it didn't produce as well as I could produce, but also two, I literally felt like I was just giving into it. And so I don't like there's a lot of like work being done around bias in AI and DEI in AI and all this stuff. And I'm like, that's like a lipstick on a pig situation, I think. Like, I think if we don't, and this is just me, I got no tech background, I got no, none of that. If our diverse brilliance is not at the table building the DNA of the shit that creates the AI, then how do you then go back to it later and be like, oh, let's make sure it's not biased? It already has a white supremacy foundation. And not just and a colonial foundation. So we know this is just a new manifestation of old systems, right? Enslavement and trafficking of my ancestors, enslavement and trafficking of children, colonizing of the continent in India and other spaces, building of weapons that could destroy the whole planet. This is a new manifestation of that for money and power and control. So this is why I said earlier, like, that we need to use that shit as a calculator and double down on being human with each other in a way we never were before. You know what I mean? And so that requires curiosity, that requires love for your neighbor, that requires humanity, that requires imagination. It's fun as hell. It's way more fun to be human. I mean, y'all, why didn't y'all shake your head to that? Y'all don't agree with that? It's not way more fun. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I grew up, I'm old, right? I'm about to be 50. But like, I love playing sports. I love going to clubs and dancing with pretty girls. I love hip hop and just blasting that shit. Like right now, I'm gonna go to my car, I'm gonna fucking blast some Tupac. That shit is fun. We're gonna go have dinner after this. I'm not even gonna have a drink. I'm detoxing right now, but I'm gonna have a great time just hanging out and talk. Being human is mad fun. That is, you ever hear Peter Thiel talk? Or like Curtis Yarwin or Alex Karp or Elon Musk? And I'm not talking about, they're neurodivergent people, I understand that. I'm not talking about that. They talk like, well, if humanity survives, okay, but that ain't really our objective here. This is some Cybertron Transformers type shit they doing. I'm not with that, right? And so anyway, we got to double down on being human. Whatever that is for you, whatever brings you joy and pleasure with your friends and family in a human space, fuck that AI shit. Yeah.
So you said when you were unemployed, and now we know your book's with the publisher. So what's now and what's next?
More of this, I hope. Short answer is I don't know. I'm kind of following my intuition. Thank God I've been able to keep the lights on in my house. So that's priority number one. Can I pay my mortgage? Can we keep the lights on? I've been able to do that. When I wrote the book, and I don't know if I'm gonna tell this story to everyone, but I'll tell it to you and to the group. It just came pouring out of me. It was like waiting, ready to be read. 83,000 words in 4 weeks. And a week or two of revision, and then I got it to some agents and publishers, and they got back to me, and it was like, this doesn't suck, because you never know, right? Like you can write whatever you want, but you got to get it to a third party, get some feedback. And when I got into agents and they called me, it was like, we want to work with you. I'm like, oh shit, it was good. It was not bad. So my hope is, I'm trying to publish it quickly, which is why I'm going the hybrid publishing route, hopefully out by the fall. Usually it's like a 12 to 18 month. We don't got time to wait for that. We got to get it out right now. So my hope is it comes out, it does well, and I get to go. So you coming in late, you turn off lights and shit. Come on, son. My hope is it comes out, it does well. People get excited enough about it to bring me to their schools to talk. Because I want to do this. I love this. I'm a teacher forever. And learning from young people is like my life, my soul. So I hope to do more of that. And, you know, I'm going to be at Hofstra and Baruch coming up, doing more of this. Thank you for getting us started. Not just about the book, but in general. And then we'll see. I may just, travel, speak, talk about the book, do those things, and then, maybe, teach at the university or something, and maybe run for U.S. Senate. I think New York needs new representation in the U.S. Senate. And so, that's something I'm looking at a couple of years down the line.
You heard it here.
Yeah. Open secret.
We might be almost at time, but maybe I saw two, so maybe we can just take both of those at once.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Leo. I grew up in Westchester County, so I've seen how there's been a cultural shift within my county over the last couple of years, whether it's from like the Black Lives Matter movement, Stop Asian Hate, and how my community members and neighbors can go behind to support your campaign for your first term, but then turn around to support George Latimer.
Yeah.
But in the same breath, we'll also support people like Mamdani. And while Mamdani's campaign was able to show that we can really come together as a community to support politicians to advocate for us, I think what is kind of after that point is like a cultural shift within our communities. Like, how do you see that kind of playing out? So we don't have politicians like Latimer who are just thrown in with so much dark money behind, and how do we get actual representation for politicians that will actually represent us?
Yeah, no, great question. One at a time is easier for me. Yes, a couple things there though. Zoran ran in New York City, right? It's very different than Westchester County. Diverse, more progressive, younger. It's a place for someone like him to run and win the way he did, if you organize accordingly. And when he got within 8 points in the polling, I said he's going to win because I knew he was going to bring out new voters. That strategy of bringing out new voters is what we have to do in Westchester County to really change the political the political climate there. We got to bring out new voters, and we got to engage new people. There's not much infrastructure at the moment that exists there. There's like Westchester Progressives and WFP and some indivisible groups who are trying to do some of that, but it's still, DSA in New York, they came together in, I think, whatever year it was, like, we got a 10-year plan, this is what we're going to do, and they fucking did it. They took down, the IDC at the state level, they elected people at the city level, and then they had this crazy fucking kid, Zoran, it's like, I'm running for mayor, right? And they did it, right? Westchester doesn't have that DSA infrastructure at all. Think about Westchester, right? People move there to get away from the shit. Like, they're not trying to get, you want your house in your suburbs and, I'm comfortable, man. I'm not trying to get riled up. But yes, during the anti-Asian hate stuff and the Black Lives Matter stuff was very powerful at that time. I think a couple of places that present opportunity are Yonkers, New Rochelle, and Mount Vernon. Leilani is saying not New Rochelle. And not Mount Vernon either. The reason why I included Mount Vernon, and she knows, she's former elected. I won't put you more, sorry, but she knows. The reason why I say Mount Vernon is because despite the spending against me, we still won 65% of the vote in Mount Vernon. And so the spending didn't impact me in that way there. The other thing I want to say is, it wasn't just the spending. They changed my district, right? So it used to be the whole North Bronx, and it became like just a small part of the North Bronx, and 200,000 black people were removed from the district. So this goes back to the independent commission and the judges and all the people who made that decision. That's infrastructure that the powers that be have been building for years. And one last thing, sorry, the chair of the Independent Redistricting Commission was the deputy county executive to George Latimer. And WFP and others were like, yo, this is a conflict of interest. He needs to step down. That never happened, and it never became a thing. And so there's no way he was going to draw any lines different for his boy. His boy wins, he becomes county executive, and he's currently in that seat. I tell this whole story in my book. And I hope, and I do not hold back, Leilani, because F these people, son. Yeah, man, it was really grimy how it happened. Anyway, thank you for the question.
Last question.
I'll be around if anyone wants to ask a side question for a couple minutes. Yes, sir.
Okay, what's up? My name is Black Rob. I'm a project manager for the Hip Hop Education Center. And how y'all didn't answer this question, what got young folks over here? Can you talk a little bit about how you defended people who are using TikTok and how you like try to get it out of the hands of word?
Yeah, man. Thank you for that question, man. No, it was 2023. I was just sworn in for my second term, and we're hearing like, they're trying to ban TikTok. And I'm like, just instinct, right? Intuition. I'm like, oh, young people are organizing on TikTok. Progressives are really growing some power on TikTok. This is why they want to ban TikTok. What they told us was, the Chinese are spying on us and using espionage through TikTok. So it's a national security issue. Like, it's that we knew that was complete bullshit, right? So I had some young people like you all on my team, especially on comms, and they brought the issue to me, and I was like, yeah, like we're gonna be out front on this, and we're gonna like resist the banning of TikTok. So we invited all the creators, like a bunch of TikTok creators came to my office, came for a press conference at the Capitol. Me, Maxwell Frost, Robert Garcia, and some others spoke out against it, and we shut that shit down. Like there was like that banning TikTok talk was we shut it down. So that's the power of like the bully pulpit I was talking about. It got so, but it didn't stop them, and so they those who wanted to ban it. They kept pushing that it needed to be banned. And so I remember we had a meeting with the intelligence community, NSA, CIA, all the intelligence community to give us their report on like the espionage angle with China and TikTok. And I remember being in there with my Republican colleagues, and they give us the report. And to sum it up, they were basically like, China is using Facebook way more than TikTok to take our information and spy on us. And in TikTok, we've seen maybe 1 or 2 examples of like censorship when someone was in like China, said something about Russia, and then Russia had to speak out against it. And that was the only example of censorship we had. So my Republican colleagues were sitting there like, oh, so this is some bullshit. and it was like, okay, thank you very much. And we left. And it was a done deal. But then again, as we see now, it was never about China and espionage, right? It was about censorship and power. So then Trump comes in. Well, the whispers of forcing a sale happened even before Trump. And then Trump comes in and he does his dictator thing and they force a sale. And then day one takeover, like you can't say Zionist, you can't say this. It's crazy, man. And so I appreciate you bringing that up because yeah, like I was leading that fight actually while I was in Congress. And so let me just zoom out, you know, and I remain sort of naive to the impact of people like me using our voices and speaking out against certain things. I'm still kind of like, oh shit, we said that and it happened. Like when I first got to Congress, one of the issues was Israel wasn't providing vaccines to Palestinians in the West Bank. And we tweeted about it. And then we wrote a letter to the consulate. And then a couple weeks later, they were providing vaccines to the West Bank. So I'm still kind of naive to like, oh snap, like we could say something and it could happen, right? And as I accept the importance of my voice and our voices, I realize that my voice is an important voice and needs to be heard in American politics on all of these issues. And not just my voice because it's special, but all of our voices. I don't care, you know, and I'll close with this. After October 7th, and if you don't know anything about my district, it's a very strong, you know, district that supports Israel. Very much so. And after October 7th, I held a healing breakfast with the Jewish community in my district, the Jewish community that is not progressive, to hear what they had to say. And just listen and take it and wear it, because I felt that was my responsibility. But there were other Jewish members of our community who were there who were progressive, who were members of an organization called Jewish Voices for Peace. If you haven't heard of them, you should look them up. And this guy stood up after we were listening to they was just pretty much attacking me. I mean, you would have thought like I fucking organized October 7th. The way they were attacking me was crazy. But I listened, I took it. But he stood up, man. And his whole body was shaking. But he spoke. And I'm paraphrasing what he said, but he was like, I've been listening to you for 2 hours, and I'm Jewish, and you're talking to Jamaal as a black man like he doesn't understand oppression, and he doesn't empathize with what we have gone through. But what we have gone through doesn't give us the right to do what we're doing now in Gaza. His whole body was shaking as he said this, but he said it anyway. And that's what I want to encourage all of us to do. He was terrified as a Jewish man standing up in front of others who were also Jewish who opposed him. He stood up, whole body shaking, and said it anyway. And we all have to do it. Whether it's a whisper, or even a tweet, or a text, or whatever, we gotta speak up for human rights and justice, or else we will lose it all. And I'm telling you, we are close to losing it all. So we gotta speak up the same way our ancestors did to try to make this flawed country better each and every generation. Now it's our turn to rebuild it for the next generation. And we gotta use our voices.
Just a couple quick announcements. Let's give a thank you to co-sponsors of this event, the Office of DEI, who introduced us, and also shout out to Brenda, who did a lot of the back end work. Our student
Thank
worker
you,
there.
Brenda.
Thank you, Brenda. Tom Hoon, chair of BFA Visual and Critical Studies and Art History, putting this together. And the Honors Program, come and check out our next event. March 16th, we have Emmy O'Brien, a psychoanalyst, who's going to talk about trans kids and their fantasy lives. So come back in March, and thank you so much for coming out tonight.
Thank you.
One more.